I woke up on May 25th, 2006, a joyful, hardworking graduate student with the world at my fingertips. I'd wake up the next day, an acid burn survivor, laying in a hospital bed connected to tubes and IVs, not knowing what was next for me. I'd suffered third-degree, full-thickness burns to 30% of my body. My life had become a TV movie. I'd spent 6.5 weeks in the hospital, falling in and out of depression, having nightmares every night of someone trying to kill me. Sometimes with a gun. Once I was pushed off a cliff, and once I was put in a furnace. The physical scars were painful, but the emotional scars terrorized me. She had held a gun to my face and shouted, "Do it again, bitch, and I'll shoot you." Sorry. I'd been fighting to slam her hand in my car door as she wildly aimed at me. Looking down the barrel of her gun, I imagined how quickly she could end my life, so I surrendered. I threw my hands in the air and offered her my purse and my keys. "Here, take whatever you want." And in that moment, I felt a splash to my face. Whoosh. Like a wave crashing against a wall of rocks, the liquid struck my forehead and my eyes and sizzled down my face like hot grease. I immediately screamed and tried to wipe it away, all the while unknowingly wiping away my skin. And then came a second splash to my torso. Whoosh. It felt like a hot punch to my gut. The pain was so immense that I kicked the car door open, and whatever clothes weren't melting off of me, I began violently ripping off. And all the while, she watched me. She watched me suffer and burn while I screamed in terror. The attacks had been overwhelming and life-altering. I was in pain, I was confused, and I didn't know what this woman wanted from me. The only thing I did know was that my life had been changed forever. I was now an acid burn survivor. When the depression would get the best of me, I would break down and cry. I would wail from my soul, "Why, God, why? Why me?" I would try to convince myself that had she shot me, I would have been better off. I actually argued with myself, "Why didn't you just let her shoot you? It was only a .22, you could have survived that bullet." And while crying, my family and nurses would surround me and tell me that everything would be all right. They tried to say it with confidence, but I could see the sadness in their eyes, and I could feel the sadness and hopelessness in my soul. When I was released from the hospital, I was still very broken. I'd move into my grandparents' basement where my dad would help care for me. He would get me to the bathroom, dress my wounds, drive me to and from day rehab. And every day he would tell me how special I was. But the methadone and sleep aids weren't working, and I lived in constant fear. I was deeply angry. I was angry that I wasn't healed, and I was angry with her. How could she do this to me? We didn't know each other. I wanted revenge on her. I wanted her to feel my pain, but 10 times worse. And there were times I wanted her buried under the jail. And this anger festered. She consumed my mind, my every waking thought. Was she sorry? Did she feel bad? Why had she chosen me? Did she know how drastically she had changed my life? These were all thoughts that ran through my mind. I would lash out at the people closest to me while simultaneously begging for them to love me. When it came time for the trial, I was a nervous wreck. My state's attorneys did their best to prepare me for what was to come, but I doubted myself throughout. Had I actually seen her, or could it have been someone else? But the moment I heard her voice, time stopped. A wave of emotions came over me, and I knew it was her. You could cut the tension in the courtroom with a knife. My family wanted to protect me. Her family was convinced that I'd picked the wrong person, yet here we were. The amount of damage caused by one person's actions was incomprehensible. My state's attorneys instructed me to write a victim impact statement. I thought I'd show up and speak from the heart until one of them plopped a notebook in front of me and said, "Write." And that I did. I wrote about my $250,000 hospital bill that I laughed at to keep from crying. I wrote about the methadone I took to help manage my pain because I was so desperate to feel better, not knowing all of the adverse side effects it have on my sleep, my personality, and my ability to function. And I wrote about how all of this impacted my family and friends because it happened to them too. And that was my plan, to tell her all of the ways she impacted me. And I would look her in the eye and not shed a tear. And that's when I saw her teenage daughter. I looked at her with sorrow, wanting to hug her. See, I had just lost my own mother 2 years prior, so I knew that sadness all too well. If her mother was convicted, she would lose her too. And that's when my feelings about her shifted. I didn't know if I was more mad at her for attacking me or for putting herself in a position to be away from her children. And as relieved as I felt that she was in custody, I also felt a little guilty. I wondered what would happen to her. Would she be rehabilitated? What about her children? And then the verdict came. Guilty. 15 years for 2 counts of heinous battery. I exhaled. Her family gasped. My journey to recovery would continue. Sitting in the basement, my days would blur together. Watching the news, as depressing as it was, became my favorite pastime. As sad as the stories were, they were a reminder for me to be grateful. There were so many people who never made it home, so many people who didn't survive to tell their stories, but I did. So I started furiously counting my blessings. I started finding joy in the little things, and I started challenging myself in new ways, so much so that I signed up to run a marathon. Yes, in 2007, I ran the Chicago Marathon. Crazy. But something else started to happen during that time. I started to let go of the anger I had towards the people who hurt me. I stopped asking why and wondering if they were thinking of me because I realized that all of the time and energy that I was putting into that wasn't helping me in any way. In fact, it was hurting me. It was holding me back. It was keeping old wounds from healing. And ultimately, it was holding me hostage. So I woke up one day and decided that I didn't want to be held captive anymore. I decided to let it go. I would forgive the people who hurt me, and I would forgive myself. I forgave myself for the choices I made, the shame, the guilt, and all the blaming that I did. And when I forgave her, I did it without an apology, without a discussion, and without expecting anything in return. And that decision changed my life. It felt like freedom. A huge burden had been lifted off my heart and my shoulders, and I could finally move past what happened to me and who hurt me. I could finally start to heal and regain a sense of normalcy. Well, this new normal of living with scars and this relatively new trauma, but I owned my story, and in sharing it, I felt empowered. I'd also discovered my purpose. Despite all of the trauma, I could use my experiences of adversity to teach and encourage others, particularly young women. And so I shared with audiences how forgiving her transformed me. In 2008, I'd returned to graduate school at DePaul University while working as an executive assistant. In 2009, I would fall in love. In 2010, I'd complete my dual master's program. In 2011, I would give birth to my amazing son, Zaylin, all while balancing the complexities of living as an acid burn survivor and crime victim. And every now and again, she would come to mind. I wasn't upset with her, but I wondered how she was faring, and I struggled with whether or not I should write her. In 2015, I'd start volunteering at a little cafe in Evanston, Illinois called Kurt's Cafe. Here, they improve outcomes for young women living in at-risk situations through work and life skills training. And at this time, I was drawn into restorative justice, and I was drawn to this organization because it's rooted in restorative justice philosophies. And it was here that I'd be gifted a book that would change my life. The book was titled Change of Heart by Jean Bishop. When I read the front cover summarizing the story of a woman who forgives her pregnant sister and husband's killer, I thought, ooh, this is way too heavy right now. So I put it away. A few weeks later, I'd have to take a train ride downtown, so I grabbed the book, and once I started reading, I couldn't put it down. I was furiously underlining, highlighting, and writing notes because this woman understood what I was feeling. At the time, my family wasn't supportive of me writing her. They were on their own personal journeys of forgiveness, and I had to respect where they were, but I also wanted them to understand and respect the space that I was in. And I think they had my best interests at heart, but they didn't want to see any more harm come to me, but I still wanted their support. So I Googled this author, I found a phone number online, called it and left a message, and to my surprise, she called me back. And a few days later, we'd meet for a coffee, and we'd just talk and bond and share, and today we're friends. There's one particular passage in the book that touched my soul. In summary, she had spoken all over the world about the murders and forgiveness. She had told all these people that she'd forgiven him, but never once has she communicated her forgiveness to him. And this struck a nerve because I had done the same thing. I had told all these people that I'd forgiven her on television, in churches, at conference, but I'd never once told her. And that's when I knew it was time. I had written her many times before, only to shred the letters or to save them on my flash drive, but on July 6, 2015, I nervously drove to the post office and mailed a letter and a copy of Jean Bishop's book to her. I was shaking and sweating as I double-checked every piece of the mailing information, and I knew I looked a hot mess because people kept asking me if I was okay. And when I got to the counter, the postmaster said, "Honey, are you sure you want to send this?" I nervously shook my head yes and pushed it towards her. I left the post office feeling great. I didn't know what the outcome would be, but I knew I'd planted a seed. My letter read, "Dear Nicole, I forgive you. I hope you are well, and I hope that you will see better days. Sincerely, Karli Butler. P.S. I'm sorry for not telling you sooner." When I got to the car, doubt started to set in. I thought, oh my God, Car, what did you just do? She might be like, what if she's mentally unstable? What if this upsets her? What if you cause more harm than good? And all of these scenarios could have happened, but I had to quickly eliminate them and remind myself that I had done this for me. And that's my story. But now I want you to think about yours. I want to challenge you to think about the role forgiveness plays in your life. Most times we expect forgiveness to be a reciprocal process. We expect or require an apology to get things started, so we hold out. I want you to consider, who haven't you forgiven? What do you need to get there? And can you forgive without those things? I know some of you might be thinking, All right, Karli, so you forgave her, but you too didn't reconcile, and you're absolutely right. I have forgiven Nicole, but that doesn't mean I want to pursue a relationship with her. My personal safety and peace of mind are my priority, and wanting those things are in no way in conflict with me wanting to forgive. And this is supported by a research sampling done by the American Psychological Association. It says, forgiveness may occur in the absence of reconciliation, and reconciliation may occur in the absence of forgiveness. I want to leave you with this. Imagine how much we could heal as individuals and as a society if we reimagined forgiveness as something less about others and more for ourselves, starting right here, without a discussion and without any expectations. Together, let's reimagine forgiveness and plant seeds of peace, hope, and healing right here. My sincere hope for you is that the next time you say, I forgive you, you are standing in front of the mirror and you're starting with yourself. Thank you.